Hi there and welcome. This is Book of Mormon reader, and I do thank you for joining me today. If this is your first time joining us, what we do here is read the Book of Mormon chapter by chapter, verse by verse, and I am working my way this time backwards for a little spice and variety and a new perspective, and then sharing my personal scripture study time with you. I try to give other resources and other ways that I have learned to apply what I've learned into my own life, and hopefully that it somehow blesses your life, enriches you, and helps you to further your own study of the scriptures in another interesting way that it might inspire you. So again, I want to dedicate this chapter to foodinsurance.com, and I'll explain why when I'm done with the chapter. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started, and then we'll have commentary after the horns blow. The Book of Mormon, 3rd Nephi, chapter 6. And now it came to pass that the people of the Nephites did all return to their own lands in the 26th year, every man with his family, his flocks and his herds, his horses and his cattle, and all things whatsoever did belong unto them. And it came to pass that they had not eaten up all their provisions, therefore they did take with them all that they had not devoured, of all their grain of every kind, and their gold, and their silver, and all their precious things, and they did return to their own lands and their possessions, both on the north and on the south, both on the land northward and on the land southward. And they granted unto those robbers who had entered into a covenant to keep the peace of the land, who were desirous to remain Lamanites, lands according to their numbers, that they might have with their labors wherewith to subsist upon. And thus they did establish peace in all the land. And they began again to prosper and to wax great. And the 26th and 7th years passed away, and there was great order in the land, and they had formed their laws according to equity and justice. And now there was nothing in all the land to hinder the people from prospering continually, except they should fall into transgression. And now it was Gidgiddoni and the judge Laconius, and those who had been appointed leaders, who had established this great peace in the land. And it came to pass that there were many cities built anew, and there were many old cities repaired, and there were many highways cast up, and many roads made, which led from city to city, and from land to land, and from place to place. And thus passed away the 28th year, and the people had continual peace. But it came to pass in the 29th year, there began to be some disputings among the people, and some were lifted up unto pride and boastings, because of their exceedingly great riches, yea, even unto great persecutions. For there were many merchants in the land, and also many lawyers, and many officers. And the people began to be distinguished by ranks according to their riches, and their chances for learning. Yea, some were ignorant because of their poverty, and others did receive great learning because of their riches. Some were lifted up in pride, and others were exceedingly humble. Some did return railing for railing, while others would receive railing and persecution, and all manner of afflictions, and would not turn and revile again, but were humble and penitent before God. And thus there became a great inequality in all the land, insomuch that the church began to be broken up, yea, insomuch that in the 30th year the church was broken up in all the land, save it were among a few of the Lamanites, who were converted unto the true faith, and they would not depart from it. For they were firm and steadfast and immovable, willing with all diligence to keep the commandments of the Lord. Now the cause of this iniquity of the people was this: Satan had great power unto the stirring up of the people to do all manner of iniquity, and to the puffing them up with pride, tempting them to seek for power, and authority, and riches, and the vain things of the world. And thus Satan did lead away the hearts of the people to do all manner of iniquity. Therefore they had enjoyed peace but a few years. And thus, in the commencement of the 30th year, the people having been delivered up for the space of a long time, to be carried about by the temptations of the devil, whithersoever he desired to carry them, and to do whatsoever iniquity he desired they should, and thus in the commencement of this, the 30th year, they were in a state of awful wickedness. Now they did not sin ignorantly, for they knew the will of God concerning them, for it had been taught unto them. Therefore they did wilfully rebel against God. And now it was in the days of Laconius, the son of Laconius, for Laconius did fill the seat of his father, and did govern the people that year. And there began to be men inspired from heaven, and sent forth, standing among the people in all the land, preaching and testifying boldly of the sins and iniquities of the people, and testifying unto them concerning the redemption which the Lord would make for his people, or, in other words, the resurrection of Christ. And they did testify boldly of his death and sufferings. Now there were many of the people who were exceedingly angry because of those who testified of these things. And those who were angry were chiefly the chief judges. And they who had been high priests and lawyers, yea, all those who were lawyers, were angry with those who testified of these things. Now there was no lawyer, nor judge, nor high priest, that could have power to condemn any one to death, save their condemnation was signed by the governor of the land. Now there were many of those who testified of the things pertaining to Christ, who testified boldly, who were taken and put to death secretly by the judges, that the knowledge of their death came not unto the governor of the land until after their death. Now, behold, this was contrary to the laws of the land, that any man should be put to death except they had power from the governor of the land. Therefore a complaint came up unto the land of Zarahemla, to the governor of the land, against these judges, who had condemned the prophets of the Lord unto death, not according to the law. Now it came to pass that they were taken and brought up before the judge, to be judged of the crime which they had done, according to the law which had been given by the people. Now it came to pass that those judges had many friends and kindreds, and the remainder, yea, even almost all the lawyers and the high priests, did gather themselves together and unite with the kindreds of those judges, who were to be tried according to the law. And they did enter into a covenant one with another, yea, even into that covenant which was given by them of old, which covenant was given and administered by the devil to combine against all righteousness. Therefore they did combine against the people of the Lord, and enter into a covenant to destroy them, and to deliver those who were guilty of murder from the grasp of justice, which was about to be administered according to the law. And they did set at defiance the law and the rights of their country, and they did covenant one with another to destroy the governor, and to establish a king over the land, that the land should no more be at liberty, but should be subject unto kings. Well, thank you for listening, and for the beginning of my commentary today, I want to go ahead and talk about who I am dedicating this chapter to. In the beginning of this chapter, it talked about the Nephites returning to all their lands with all their stuff. And it says in verse 2 that they also brought with them their food that they had not devoured. And so I'm dedicating this chapter to foodinsurance.com, because they have an amazing system of, how do I put this? The food that they have is packaged so lightly and with such variety that you seriously could go on a journey and take what they have and have something different every day for, I don't know, a month or so, maybe even more. I don't know, because I haven't ordered everything. I just ordered some samples that they had, and I've been contemplating as to what kind of food storage that I would like to have. And when I was growing up, we had traditional cases and cans of wheat and fake meat called TVP. We had all kinds of stuff that we stored. And did we use it? Not usually. We didn't use it. And in fact, my mom just told me that when they were on their mission and my brother lived in their house, he threw away like 25 enormous cans of wheat because it was so old. Well, the food insurance food lasts for 25 years. It's just as fresh if you make it tonight as it will be in 25 years. And so I think that it's more individualized, it's more variety, it's easier to use. What on earth would I do with a can of wheat today? That being said, so that's who I want to dedicate this chapter to, foodinsurance.com. If you haven't checked them out before, it is worth a check out, and call. See if you can order a sample so that you can try it, because it's good food too. I think that we're in for some times that we have never experienced before in our own lifetime, whether through calamity or through unemployment or whatever it is, that it behooves us to heed and hearken and follow the words of the prophets who have asked us to get a food supply. Knowing the destruction that these people had, for 3 days they had nobody. Do you have even 3 days worth of food? Do you have 3 days that if you had to grab your backpack, do you have everything that you need? Do you? I don't even know that I do. But I do remember when I lived back east and I had a basement. Half of my basement was dedicated to our little family store. And we had a food service over there that came all the time. But when we moved back to Southern California from Massachusetts, we did not take it all with us. And so I was thinking, how did they take all this food? They must have had an enormous space. How did they manage to carry all this food? That's one of the reasons I didn't take it with me. And I sold it at an incredible discount. And I never replaced it. I never replaced all that food. So anyway, those are my own laments about food storage, but also that there is hope, that there is a company out there who, for a very, very fair price, is equipped to help you make it easy to have food. And it sounds funny, like food insurance. Normally you pay insurance and it goes into this long bucket that you never hear the bottom of the echo. But food insurance is actually, you get to buy food for yourself. It's not some fund that doesn't give you anything back. Anyway, so that's who I'm dedicating this chapter to. Now, for the things that I thought of immediate application in this, in case you didn't grasp the first time listening through, and I never do, I usually have to listen to it 2 or 3 or 4 times even to sort of get what it is that's happened. And that's kind of the first thing. How can you get anything of benefit to you if you don't understand? And I think we have an obligation to understand the scriptures and why it is that they're preserved for us. Well, upon further inspection and more application to my own life, I realized there's so much in here that we see today. And I know the chapter I did yesterday, 3 Nephi chapter 7, I couldn't believe that it was sort of like reading a very current piece of news. And this same thing happened with me this time. These are some of the notes I took. Don't ever think that the law is on your side. Is that me being cynical? I'm just saying. The Lord of the Flies, Star Chamber, drone strikes, emergency preparedness, gold, against autonomy. And these are some of the things that popped out in my head as I read through. Now, Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies is a book. I think it was made into a movie also. But it's a book that is about this airplane crash and these English boys, perfectly refined English boys, who find themselves on an island and very quickly have a descent into savagery. When we see on 3 Nephi 7 what happened, how these people left their civilizations and got broken up into tribes, how quickly it happens. In fact, not just into civilization, but into morality and into everything gets debased. Yesterday I watched the little clips from Rabbi Daniel Lapin, who I dedicated my chapter to, about how quickly people descend into debauchery and how it's so much easier because it takes a lot of effort to elevate oneself, and how easy it is just through, even just think about that, through gravity. He likened a building and the top floor, the penthouse suite, versus the basement, and how much energy it takes even for an elevator to go up to the top, versus how it not only does not take any energy, but it's difficult not to descend, even if you're just trying to stay in the same place. If you didn't watch those little clips, I absolutely urge you to search for on Google Rabbi Daniel Lapin and Baal, Baal. He talks about that, and it's just an incredible thing. Now, I also found a quote that I remember meant so much to me when I was at an interesting point in my life, watching people that I knew personally leave and enter into apostasy and start to continue on this path of incredible just decay. I called it the unraveling of a soul, of someone that I knew and loved very much, and watched it happen right before my eyes, and I felt powerless to stop it from happening. But here's what Elder Neal A. Maxwell says about rapid decay. We're looking at, it says the 26th year, the 30th year, it goes down 26th year. Anyway, it's just a very short period of time, and I thought, years? I saw this happen within days, weeks, months. And so when we see these cycles of wickedness happen right before our eyes, it doesn't take years. It just takes a tiny short time. So listen to how Neal A. Maxwell talks about rapid decay. I love the words that he uses and the imagery. He says, when some individuals fray and unravel, it seems to happen so fast. They have no brakes, and they crash through one restraining barricade after another, leaving no skid marks. Onlookers are surprised at the ghastly momentum this process acquires, undoubtedly propelled by pride. All the while, such individuals feed on wafer-thin rationalizations. Now, no one can say it like Elder Neal A. Maxwell says it. How beautiful is that? So we watch this happen here with these people, the Nephites. They started out, and again in this scripture, we are presented with a complete contrast. They start from being peaceful and prosperous, and they degenerate into class warfare. They talk about the cities and the roads and the communication that they enjoyed. And then there it says right here in verse 10, they began to be lifted up in pride and boastings because of their riches, and they started persecuting those who weren't so rich. And then it offers that there were merchants, lawyers, and many officers. And a lot of times lawyers get a bad rap. My father is a lawyer, and he has heard every lawyer joke in the book, and we always bring them to his attention. I remember the Shakespeare festival I went to. He said, kill all the lawyers. And my mom bought that magnet, thought it was so funny. And there are 2 or 3 of them in his ward, and they're always making lawyer jokes. I personally have experienced dishonorable lawyers, and if I could name them, I would, but I'm not sure any good would come of it. But anyway, so it's interesting that they're associating this corruption and this wickedness with merchants, lawyers, and officers in the government. And of course, we know today that there is much corruption in our government. And in fact, that leads me to one of my other little comments that I was talking about, these drone strikes. They talked about here about these secret murders that were happening because they felt that they knew better who should die, and they were killing the prophets. In our day, today, there is an executive order on the books to have this secret kill list of people who they deem to be terrorists. Well, who is it that decides who it is that are terrorists or not? Do they think prophets are terrorists? Do they think, oh, well, we'll have the acceptance of the mass of the people because we're saying we're just going to get the bad guys? But then we learned that they are monitoring everybody's emails, looking for search words. Our privacies are being stripped from us. Our rights are being stripped from us. There was also a movie that, I don't know if you have seen it. I don't know. I'm not even sure what it's rated. I just know I saw it on TV. It's called The Star Chamber, and it starred Michael Douglas and Hal Holbrook. And these were these judges who were so sick of the system, of all these crooks getting off because of a technicality, that something happened where some evidence could not be admissible because of one thing or another. And they decided to take upon themselves this secret group of people to execute the people who deserve to be executed. And it's kind of interesting what happens as a human experiment to, you're rooting for that. You're rooting for, yeah, get the bad guy, instead of, yeah, keep the law. I think that happens when the good people realize that when you try to keep the law, you get punished. They're trying to make so many laws on the books now that decent folk who are law-abiding citizens can't possibly keep up with it, so that they'll somehow be guilty of a crime by doing nothing, such as, the universal health care rule that is descending upon us like a firestorm. It's just incredible what happens, and we see how quickly this can happen in just our lifetime. Also, there was another book that Cass Sunstein, who's the regulation czar, who wants to put so many different stringent everything on regular folk because we can't possibly know what's good for us. And he reviewed a book called Against Autonomy by Sarah Connolly. They justify coercive paternalism, which means basically, you really can't make your own choices for yourself. We know better than you. Who does that sound like? Doesn't that sound like Satan's plan in the pre-existence, when Satan said, I don't think you guys will be able to make the right decisions. You just need to do what I say and everybody will be saved. We are experiencing the same war on earth that we experienced in heaven. And I think the hope of it is to know that we defeated it once in heaven, and that eventually the right will prevail on earth also. Meanwhile, we have a lot to do in the meantime to stand up for what's right, as they did here. The people brought these others to task. They took them up in the law, and we see people, even with the scandal that is Benghazi right now, that some of the righteous and good people are trying to make the other leaders accountable for their wicked and evil actions or inactions. And we know, I know there is some enormous cover-up going on for other clandestine activities. I just know it. Now, here's the thing. In verse 18, they did not sin ignorantly, for they knew the will of God concerning them, and they did willfully rebel against God. That's the thing, is the attitude. There's one thing about if you haven't been taught the gospel and you live somehow like a savage, but once you have received knowledge, the Lord is interested in giving everybody a chance to hear the gospel. And once you hear it, now you're accountable for the choices that you make. You can't plead ignorance anymore. That's something that is coming. The day of reckoning is coming. And every person who ever lives on this planet needs to be aware that the day of reckoning will come, that they will stand before their Maker. They will give an accounting of their life. And to deny people the consequences from their behavior is folly. It's a lie. It's a lie to think that there will be no consequences. And that's why we have a Savior, is so that we can understand our depravity. Even though we have divine within us, the natural man is so strong that it takes more to fight it than it does to simply succumb to it and then say, I'll repent later. So many people have the misinformation that is what the case is. So this chapter is a perfect example of what happens when there start to be these disputations among folks because of the differences of people, whatever they are. In this chapter they talk about because of money, because of education. But we could take that from today because of anything. You could look at yourself and be different from anything. The color of your skin, the size of your body, the color of your hair, the length of your neck, where you live, what city you're from, what car you drive, what shoes you wear, what pants you wear. Any one of these things can cause rifts and differences because it's like people are looking to be offended. They're looking for it. They're looking to revel in being offended. Well, guess what, folks? We're different. We all have differences. Men, women, black, white, Filipino, Hawaiian, Samoan, Tongan. We're made different. No matter what, we can't help what we are. So why use that as a basis for discrimination? Why use the size of you? Why use anything for that? Let's just get along. I mean, I know it's not going to happen that we will not have peace on this earth until the Prince of Peace comes again to restore it. But for crying out loud, we just need to have our eyes open and our ears open, that we know that Satan has run amok among us, and to at least root it out from within us, and to learn to stand up boldly as these prophets did and declare what the real truth is of the gospel, which is you got to follow the commandments, folks. Satan's going to try and beguile you. And nothing that you try to reach for and attain as far as riches or education or power will fill that void until you turn to him, make yourself humble like a little child, and keep the commandments. Hopefully there are some great things in there to inspire you to do some more study and more understanding of these principles that are preserved for us in these scriptures. We'll see you next time in 3 Nephi chapter 5. Have a wonderful day. Bye.